Oh, hey, welcome back to Bread Therapy. My name's Daniel. I'm a professional therapist and hobby baker, and today we're talking about conflict styles or cycles and making a couple loaves of chocolate chip banana bread. The first cycle I want to talk about is called the protest polka, or the criticize withdraw conflict style. And this is a pattern that can repeat almost indefinitely if we get stuck in it too much. Basically what happens is there's a feeling of disconnection and one partner criticizes the other, reaching out for this connection but in a negative way, where the other person then steps back because they've been criticized, and it's just this dance that continues and continues. Sue Johnson says attachment relationships are the only ties on earth where any response is better than none. And when we get no emotional response from a loved one, we're wired to protest. So the protest polka is all about trying to get a response that connects and reassures. But it often gets mixed up in this negative light. The second style is called the attack, or also known as find the bad guy. This is a style in which both members are trying to point out the flaws or the reasons that the other person is not living up to the standards, or almost trying to point out who the most unlovable person in the couple is. In all of these conflict styles that we'll be talking about, I think the first goal is to identify the problem or the style or this negative cycle as the bad guy or the enemy, rather than each other. And this is especially important in this find the bad guy or attack. But we want to personify or externalize this negative cycle in a way that we can call it out when it happens. Ooh, it looks like we're getting swept up in our negative cycle, or we're playing find the bad guy again. Let's try to reset. In a relationship dynamic, typically there's one member who is the pursuer, the one pursuing connection and intimacy and closeness a little bit more. And in a negative cycle, there's often then a withdrawer, someone who kind of withdraws from the sense of connection or the conflict or the closeness for a various number of reasons. But the third cycle is called the freeze and flee cycle. And this is a cycle where both partners are kind of burnt out and discouraged and begin to retreat and stonewall each other. It's a pursuer that is burnt out and no longer pursuing. And when we get into the freeze and flee cycle, this is often the beginning of grieving the relationship, especially for the pursuer, and starting to move towards detachment. Some couples can stay and be okay with this sense of detachment and disconnection and just kind of live as roommates, whereas other couples may be at least thinking about divorce or separation at this point. And the last cycle is called the chaos and ambivalence cycle, where a partner may demand closeness, but when it's offered, there's like this threat involved in being vulnerable that triggers a reactive defense and distance reaction, which then pushes the other partner into a frustrated withdrawal. This cycle feels like chaos. It doesn't make any sense to both partners involved, and it most often reflects a fearful avoidant attachment style, which is typically a sign that there may be some history of trauma for at least one of the individuals. And the most active partner probably makes these anxious bids for connection, but then when it's offered, switches into an avoidant mode and retreats. I'll leave a book recommendation in the description, but for all of these cycles, if you need help, I would encourage you to find a competent couples counselor to help you work through these issues, as getting outside of your negative cycle can be difficult when it's so easy to get swept up in it. I think communication and the ability to communicate effectively that evokes an empathetic or understanding response rather than a defensive response is also a key skill to have navigating any relationships. So if that's something you're interested in, learning how to communicate more effectively and less violently, subscribe and stick around for my next video on nonviolent communication. Thanks for watching. See you next time.